Hi, everyone. And when I say Soviet, once again, if at at any point by chance a Georgian watches the two recordings, whenever I say Soviet, I don't mean to say that that part of Georgia, that heritage of that period, it's not doesn't belong to Soviet Union. It belongs to Georgia. I'm just referring to a period to kind of place you in the right context. That's it. Because I have been criticized for that by locals a couple of times, and I mean, I have grown thick skin, Russian Israeli, being in Georgia, like yeah. But anyway, I just kind of trying to set things right here. Okay, so we are starting as usual. Yeah, okay, we can do it this way. No, it's better if I switch off the sound because it might just scare you all of a sudden and me again. So I'll just better do it other way. So first, short walk around the building, in European neighborhood, the German colony, and this is by far some of the most beautiful examples of European architecture in Tbilisi. So it was built in the end of the 19th century, and it's I would say the only example of the so-called neo-Gothic architecture, but it's also so eclectic, so it's really hard to say. It's eclectic, right? So, but in the building, apart from being the home to the Oldenburgs, it's now Georgian State Museum of Art, Music, Cinema, and Choreography. Oh, museum, theater, cinema, and everything, and all their friends. And yes, originally, that pink building was not in the picture. It was added only in the 20th century after 1920s, and it was just one standalone, cute building, which wasn't built for the Oldenburgs. It was purchased by the Oldenburgs, and the Oldenburgs, just to remind you, they were originally Danish dynasty that um, actually in the 18th century and also in the 19th century became related for different marriages to the Romanovs. And the Oldenburgs were based in let's say, Oldenburgs, so let's say, were not allowed to marry someone of a even just simple aristocratic title. It had to be proper aristocracy. I'm not going into details here because Georgian aristocracy and how it worked, like so different social classes, it's kind of complicated. It's not the tour about that. But it would be interesting to give a tour about the Georgian royal dynasty of Bagrationi, because Georgians believe that that dynasty actually came from David. I mean, the David, right? Uh, the uh, the King David, right, of the Israelites. Well, nevertheless, that's definitely something that I will be doing in the coming years, months, not years, months, not. Yeah. So Duke Constantine of Oldenburg, he came first to Georgia to develop the land, and at that time it was part of the Russian Empire. He's mainly remembered for developing a lot of spa areas, resort areas. That is true. Also, the establishing of champagne making in sparkling wines, not just champagne, but okay, sparkling wines in Georgia, and development of a lot of medical facilities as well. And he just happened to be very frequent in Georgia and in the town of Kutaisi. He met Agrippina, who at that time was married to, well, she was married and her marriage wasn't really, I would say, a happy one. So Agrippina Japaridze was her name. And well, we spoke about it in details. I'm not going to repeat myself, but for those who haven't seen the previous episode, it will kind of place you in the right time and in the right place. So they, after her husband passed away, she married Oldenburg. I mean Constantine of Oldenburg. There were a lot of rumors, like a lot of, I would say, dirty stories that he had won her in a game of cards because her late husband was a gambler and also left her without a penny. Well, he was a bit abusive, that's true, and he had issues with alcohol, but no, that didn't really happen. So first he passed away. We saw her photos wearing a black gown, so she was definitely, she was mourning. And after that, the same year, she married Constantine of Oldenburg. And that's the house they purchased for themselves in Tbilisi, but they were not based in Tbilisi. They were based in Kutaisi when they were in Georgia, but their permanent living was in St. Petersburg. This is the photo of 1917, and here you don't see Oldenburgs because they sold the house in 1913 because Oldenburg passed away from well, he was sick, and the house no longer belonged to them. For example, here this is the photo. The Vysotsky Tea Company owned the house, at least at that time. I haven't been able to find a lot of information, but that definitely was not the house of the Oldenburgs anymore. And that's what we saw from the, throughout all the episodes. I'm kind of giving you an intro. This is the video, but that's what it looks from the outside, from the porch. And there is a garden, a small garden, and there's a little bit to see also in the backyard, which we're going to do in the final episodes of the palace to walk around. There's also an interesting history in the garden related to Georgian theater and cinema. But we are now back to the room where we finished last time because I have not shared everything with you. And I just find this room so lovely. And that's the room where we spoke about the love story of the Oldenburgs. And there's a sneak peek to the room we're going to visit after this one. What you see on the walls and the furniture, this is not original to the Oldenburgs, but the house itself is. That's a little balcony that you could see from the outside with the knights from both sides. The house itself and the interiors, they were restored as best as possible. And it was the first, as I always say, the first scientific restoration in Tbilisi that gave a kickstart to all the many, many other projects. And that's what the Oldenburg saw when they moved in. But the furniture was is not there. It's not memorial. It's not a memorial museum. But all the furniture is contemporary to those days. Obviously, on this wall you see a portrait of Agripina Japaridze, um, but it's the modern. It's the contemporary. I mean, it's modern portrait. It's not from the times when the Oldenburgs lived here. But a lot of artworks here on the walls, they are either from the private collection of the Dadiani family, because originally Agrippina was from the Dadiani dynasty, aristocratic dynasty, and her husband was from a Japanese family, and then she became Countess von Zarnikau when she married Duke Constantine. She couldn't get the title of Oldenburg because she had been married before, but in her second marriage, she was allowed to be given a lower title. So it's really complex. Let's not focus on this that much. So in this room, we also have a lot of paintings and artworks related to the life of Georgian theater and also cinema. We spoke about it last time. That recording is available. I just wanted to draw your attention to a couple of interesting items in the room. I cannot be talking about each and everything in the room. So I particularly like this portrait. It's also modern work. It's just several years old, but at the moment I entered the room, I couldn't take my eyes off this lady, and I thought she was maybe a relative to Agrippina because she looks royal, but her eyes are so troubled, right? There's something that she looks troubled, like a troubled mind, troubled soul, and I couldn't take my eyes off her. And then I did some reading and I did some digging. So actually, that's the portrait of an actress, Mako Safarova Abashidze, or Mako Safarova, and she is portrayed in this artwork as Ophelia. So it's kind of, oh, okay, but that touched me so much, that painting, that eyes. Those eyes had such an impact on me that well, it's just amazing. So, and indeed, she is believed to have been one of the best actresses of her time and also of the Georgian theater ever. We spoke about it last time that the 19th century became the mid 19th century period of the revival of the Georgian theater in the new circumstances, in the new reality under the Romanov Empire, under the Russian Empire. And we're talking here about the Georgian theater in Georgian language. And it was not prohibited um, at all. Absolutely. Actually, I would say even in this regards, I'm not talking about politics, right? I'm just talking about Georgian theater. It was highly encouraged the by I would say by the Romanovs, but their power was represented here by the Viceroy Vorontsov Dashkov. So Marko Safarova was one of the first and biggest actresses of the Georgian theater, and she was also a theater producer and an entrepreneur. Well, I am absolutely in awe of this artwork. I don't know. Well, now well, okay, I understand that, okay, this is Ophelia looking at me. Okay, I get it. But without that story, oh, I pictured many other, tragic stories in the life of this woman when I didn't even know who she was. Well, and mind you, I'm not local, right? I'm try. There are still so many things that I don't know about Georgia, obviously, and it what really bothers me because I'm a perfectionist and I want to get to the core of things. And sometimes when I'm searching information about certain people, I come across also other names, and then I want to search about them, and then about them, and then voila, 6 a.m. and I'm still not in bed. This has happened a couple of times, but not all the time. No. So this is her in the company of four of the fellow actors. So she, after being an amateur actress and then becoming a star, she also decided to get independent from her theater, from the theater she served in, and then she established her own theater company. And they started touring around Georgia, and she had an incredible success. Her husband was Vaso Abashidze, so she was Safarova, is her maiden name. Vaso Abashidze was a comedy actor who had been hitting on her for many years, but she kind of just kept ignoring him and stood him up a couple of times as well. But then they met somewhere in the countryside, and he told her that if she had not married him, he would drown himself in the lake. And he went to the lake and he got into the water, and then she said, okay, whatever. So that's how they got married. They had a daughter together. Yeah, who was Tasso Abashidze, about whom I spoke last time, because Tasso Abashidze, unlike her parents, she became the movie star and mainly remembered as the movie star, but she also played in the theater. So it's kind of the actors dynasty of actors. That's 100%. Yes, so eventually they got divorced, by the way, and I guess you just can't really make a woman marry you by threatening to drown yourself. I mean, it's not really gonna help you much, right? Anyway, so they got divorced, and there was really a lot of major scandals around the daughter, like who gets the custody. Well, but eventually, so Maria Safarova Bashidze is one of the pillars of Georgian theater. It's a big, big, big deal. Anyway, I also like this chest of drawers very much, which is contemporary, but again has no relation to the Oldenburgs themselves. The Oldenburgs were not frequent here. They would come to this place several times a year at maximum, and that wasn't their AC. I still have no idea how that AC is there, but well, there's no other way, obviously. So, another room, another gorgeous fireplace, and costumes, more artworks, more amazing furniture and stories. And throughout the tour, actually, we're not really leaving this room tonight. And it's not because I for some reason want to make gazillion of tours of this palace. No, but because there are a bunch of stories to share. And again, the stories and the connections, they go way beyond just my Tbilisi tours and all the way to Jerusalem even. Interesting, right? But this fireplace, I mean, if you saw one of the first episodes when we entered one of the white hall, that fireplace was amazing. Well, this is I have never seen ornate fireplaces like this. Oh, okay, give me a second. Let me just make sure this bot goes away. Hmm. Bye bye. And I'm back. Yeah. This palace, this restoration was one of the most expensive projects in many, many years for Georgia. And whenever I see things like that in Tbilisi, well, I always think about what this country has been through. And well, all these opulence that there is there, and all these exhibits and all this furniture, it was not just the state money, right? It was not just the country's budget, but there were a lot of donations. There were a lot of support coming from the Georgian businessmen in Georgia and in Georgian diaspora. There's a big Georgian community in the States and in Europe. So they would say it's kind of a big joint project, all aimed at the preservation and promotion of Georgian legacy and Georgian heritage. So I will be just focusing on some, I would say, most interesting items that we see in the room, and it's going to be all related to the history of Georgian theater. So that was the portrait of Vlado Meshkishvili. Meshkishvili, that's how it should be pronounced. Vlado Meshkishvili was an amateur actor. He wasn't even an actor. In fact, he he had a different profession, but he had to stop his work, and he came to Tbilisi, and he was born in a different region. But then, due to his work conditions, he was sent away from Tbilisi, and he lived in Kutaisi. And there, because he was bored, he took up a hobby. He started, playing in a local theater, and it wasn't even a theater. There were a lot of there are certain traditions in Georgia that certain celebrations that look like a theater performance, and he participated in that, like Kinoba, for example, or there's some other Berika Oba festival. It's when you dress up, put on masks, and you um, you mock locals, you mock politicians, you mock the royals, and different events that had happened in a town, country, or whatever. And then somehow, uh, from this, I would say, very amateur activity, a big theater group was established. And then little by little, he, with years, became a professional actor, and he's considered one of the founders of Georgian drama theater. And there is a theater in Kutaisi named after him. So I would say that Maria Safarova Bashidze and Lado Meskishvili are the two pillars of Georgian theater. It's not just them, obviously. There were other actors too, but that's, I would say, something that really matters. But at that time there hadn't been any theater school whatsoever. That was still, a long way to go. Uh, okay, so also in the museum we have costumes, mainly from movies, sometimes from the theater. And I just want to remind you of a movie that I showed you last time. It's called Hanuma, right? And that's one of the, well, it was based uh, on a story. It's the story of matchmaking. Like a girl um wanted to, well, a family wanted to get their daughter to get married, and they wanted the best husband for her, and of course it was all set up, but she wanted to marry someone else that didn't have enough funds and everything, of a much lower descent, and thanks to Hanuma, who was a matchmaker, they managed to work it out. And this is one of the most, I would say, vibrant um, mm, plays, because it was eventually made way to a lot of theaters, also in the Russian Empire. It was popular throughout the throughout the Soviet Union. I'm sorry, that was already after the Soviet Union was came to Georgia, and also from that kind of a, what do you call it, like it's not a sequel. It's kind of a it's not even a prequel. I forgot what the word, spin-off. Yeah, the spin-off. So it was kind of a spin-off, a film. There was a film called Keto and Kote. That's actually the story more about these two people, right? So the girl, the lady and the gentleman. So Keto and Kote, and that became, along with Hanuma, it also became one of the most iconic movies in Georgian history. And that dress that I showed you, it was there in the film, 1948. That's when the film was released. No, well, yeah, 1948, 1949. So that's already after the Second World War. So originally, again, as I said, it's based on the Hanuma play by Tsagarelli. That's that's the man who invented Hanuma in general. And so this is the poster for the film. It was filmed in Georgia. Georgia had its own film studio that obviously kind of was within the shade of the Soviet movie studios across the Union. And I wanted to share with you an episode from the movie with this dress. And by the way, do you remember Taso Bashidze? So the daughter of Marisa Farova and Vaso Bashidze. So she was the star in the Hanuma movie, right? You remember that? So the Keto and Kote was filmed way later. So Taso Bashidze had already. It's either she had passed away or had already retired when that film was released and Keto and Kote was released. But um, the actress wanted to be very much like her because Tessa Bashidze was the iconic character in the movie. And that's the dress. You will recognize it. They obviously it has been restored, and now it's just part of the collection of the museum. And by the way, in the movie, you will see the matchmaker playing the traditional instrument. There were two string instruments in well, there are actually many more, but let's just focus on these ones. There is a panduri and the chonguri, two musical instruments, string musical instruments, but they differ in the way they sound, in the number of strings. For example, panduri has 3 and chonguri has 4, and chonguri sounds a bit different from panduri, more melodic, more vibrant. And traditionally, chonguri is the musical instrument played by women and panduri by men. Okay, so you should be able to have the sound. If you don't, let me know and I will play it again, but it should be working. Oh yeah, and I have provided the subtitles, but they just don't cut it. But the main idea, you will get there. You will. So the Hanuma, well, the matchmaker, not the Hanuma, well, the matchmaker is trying to help them get married. And well, a major spoiler, everything will work out for them.
Рано огорчаешься, княгиня. Пока Ханума жива, можешь спать спокойно. Ханума, я твою беду рукой отведу. Дать хочу тебе совет, совет мой право. В этом мире я скажу, и щедро награжден, и способен и умен. Счастлив ты и богат, но ведь должен этот сон сердцем ты понимать.
I will give a little explanation here. So the man, the blonde man, he's a rich merchant, and the family of Keto wants her to marry this gentleman. And Hanuma is there promoting, advertising the girl, how amazing she is, praising her and everything. And everyone says, "Yeah, you should marry, you should marry, you should marry." It won't work. But anyway, because Hanuma kind of promises both parties to work it out, and eventually it works out in the best way possible. And now comes Georgian polyphony. So why I'm showing you this? Because you get to hear Georgian music, Georgian singing. Georgian polyphony is something absolutely out of this world. And also you see the costumes.
Осторожно, не разбейте.
Что вы, дядя Макар, не разобьем, не разобьем.
Oh, and yeah, do you see the horn that he's drinking from? So this type of horn could not be standing on the table, right? It couldn't stand on the table, so he had to empty it. And this is no joke. So it's not just a small horn that you sometimes, see in the streets of Tbilisi. I show you on my tours. They were like big ones for celebration. So imagine that. Well,
Первый гильдии купец Макар Котряшвили.
yep. So he could place it somehow, right? But he had to hold it. Obviously, you wouldn't have to drink it in one go, but you kind of have the idea. So that's an episode. Again, there are um there are restaurants named Keto and Kote. There is one in Tbilisi. It's like everyone uses quotes from the movie. It's something. It's like Casablanca. It's like breakfast at Tiffany's for Georgian. Something like that. It's like absolute like evergreen. Some more people that I think are worth mentioning if we talk about Georgian theater in general. Some also interesting actors, and just I would say people, beautiful people. Let's put it like this. So Valerian Shalikashvili, I just I don't know much about him, to be honest. He is just is a very good actor, incredibly popular, a womanizer, and I mean, you could you could tell why it was like that. And he's also one of the founders of the theater school. It wasn't really the theater school the way we know it today, but he helped a lot of amateur actors at the very I would say initial stage of Georgian theater. Well, okay, in his like formative years to become more professional, and but all these people they seem to have this natural talent for acting as well, and they just were extremely, extremely elegant. I mean, look at this mustache, look at the profile, just the eyes and everything. I don't know. It's just maybe, well, it could be just me, but I just thought it would be nice. Nutsa Chkheidze was an actress. She was, well, she started very small. When she was 13, she was already, getting some roles in the theater. And many directors did not really take her serious at all. And she did encounter some bullying, some mocking, and everything. But the moment she started playing, well, things changed, and the audience loved her immediately, and it was love at first sight, and till the end of her days, she played till very, very, very advanced age, and um, she was also considered one of the most beautiful women, and she always looked younger than she was. She's just this very small, small woman, little woman. So, Lado Meshishvili played with her. She also studied in Kutaisi. In a way, Kutaisi is considered the kind of the birthplace of the Georgian theater before it became big in Tbilisi. This is interesting how it worked. I'm not sure why Kutaisi was chosen for this. I guess it's just how it worked. That's basically it. Obviously, Chinese vases, because that was a big trend, a big, big major trend in general, regardless of the country, that's for sure. And some more interesting costumes that we have. These are copies of the costumes, but that's not really what important. What is important that the history behind it. For example, um, um, this there is a portrait on the wall that we're going to see. That was the copy of the original fresco from the Britannia monastery of King George IV. He was called Lasha, and he was the son to the most important, to the biggest German queen, Tamar the Great. We're talking about the Georgian Renaissance period, and so it's 12th and 13th century. Queen Tamar, I spoke about her many times, and I will be talking about her many more times because she is Again, one of the pillars of Georgian history and culture. She is the woman who managed uh, to unite many Georgian lands, and also she managed to fight a lot of onslaughts from the enemies. And she was a wise ruler as well. She didn't really make a lot of enemies, and she made some of the enemies into her friends. Her second husband was David Soslan, so Lasha was their son. He was just king consort. So this is the monastery where these frescoes can be found, and this is the only image, so to speak, the portrait of these people. Well, and this is the copy of that fresco, but on canvas. Well, why is it here? Also because Lasha is wearing traditional men's garment. Uh, they were basically kind of an underdress for men. We're talking about the men, and also there was some sort of the upper dress, and in, they were made for theater, for movie. They were made all sorts of copies. And there's also an interesting thing that I started digging more about Lasha. Well, again, because I didn't know much about him, to my shame. And I came across this interesting miniature, clearly from some medieval source, right? Say this is the Georgian king Lasha IV attacking Mongols in 1220. Le Fleur de Histoire de Tiers d'Orient by Hayton of Corcus. Who was that? Sorry for my French. I mean, you could read that, right? I mean, who was that? Like, what's going on there, right? So I started digging, I started reading more, and well, who was this Hayton of Corcus? Hayton of Corcus was actually an Armenian historian, well, his yeah, historian, a diplomat, a politician, and a writer. And he was the one who represented Armenians and also Georgians and in general the Caucasus in Europe. He was the main source of information of what's going on in the Caucasus for Europe. For example, that's him um, presenting the news to Pope Clement V. Right? Get the idea. And so I so all the information that Europe had, and even now the information we have about the life in the Caucasus, outside of the, let's say, Georgian and Armenian chronicles, right? So from the out, well, all the information that Europe had and we now have, that's thanks to him. That's an interesting piece of information, at least to me, because well, I didn't know that. And his book, well, La Fleur des Histories, you get the idea, is still a very important historical source about history of the Caucasus, on the history of the Caucasus. Well, I find it interesting. Yep. Okay. So we see the garment of Lasha, well, son of Queen Tamar, and Soslan and King Soslan. Well, and also there are other costumes here. But before the costumes, so you see the portrait of Ketevan Magalishvili. He, he's also referred to as Gabriel Majori, whatever. He Originally he was just a warrior. He was a military man, but he had a hobby, theater. And Ketevan Magalashvili was the artist, and Gabriel Majori was the person depicted. Sorry, what am I talking about? There was the one who was depicted here. And Gabriel Majori lived in the 18th century, and he and his well, all the fellow officers, they were also actors. So it was very common, again, because of the many onslaughts throughout the Georgian history, with the death of Tamar, with the demise of Lasha, her son. Eventually, after that, Georgian period of Renaissance came to an end, and kind of the Dark Ages, the stagnation began because Georgia was torn by the Persians and then the Ottomans, and it would be basically between the rock and the hard place until uh, until the moment when everything was completely we just went totally south. That was the battle of 1795, Battle of Kırtanisi, when Persian Shah Aga Muhammad Khan attacked Tbilisi and burned it almost to the ashes, almost to ashes. Tbilisi was razed to the ground, and in that battle, also Gabriel Maggiore died, and all his fellow officers. So they were officers, but in the free time, they all uh, had their different. They had their lives, right? So they had a small theater that traveled together with all the regiment, and they entertained the fellow officers and the people. So, but then all of them died in September 1795 at that Battle of Kırtanisi. That was this is one of the darkest pages of Georgian history. That artwork was made by the artist whom we already know. Hold on a second. We've seen his works in the previous rooms. So he was also a theater artist, by the way, Valerian Sidamon Aristavi. He was a theater and cinema artist, and one of the most prolific and prominent theater artists of his time. That's the battle. It happened, so that battle happened in the outskirts of Tbilisi. Actually, that area is part of Tbilisi, and there is a church built on the spot where the battle took place. And I think I will be taking you there at some point. There's also quite a lot to see. It's a little bit further down from the old city, but so just in case, Aga Muhammad Khan, that was him. So he is the one who destroyed Tbilisi, and then in the course of the 19th century, the Russian Empire was in charge of the restoration of the city. There were a lot of illustrations. These are already the Persian chronicles of how the amazing Shah uh, uh, basically, defeated the weak Georgia. So different narrative, different point of view, right? What can we say? And there were a lot of illustrations, obviously, of the battle and how people survived and how people died. So many people died. And here we have the costumes of Mamluks. And Mamluk, the peoples I have spoken so much about because, who were the Mamluks first and foremost? So here you see the description of the costumes that the Mamluks wore. And who were the Mamluks? Mamluks were basically the warriors, the war machines. They were uh, taken as slaves or as hostages or purchased, depending on the area and different circumstances, from families in the Caucasus. They were in the Middle East. Mm, there were a lot of Georgian boys who also became the slaves, and they were all taken to Egypt, and there they were trained. And from slave, Mameluke actually means someone that belongs. So someone who belongs to someone else. That's what they mean. But that's what their name actually means. And technically they were slaves, but in reality they became a caste of very strong and powerful people that eventually they stood against their oppressors, those who enslaved them, and they established their own state. And this is how the Mamluk Empire started sweeping the Middle East, and many of those Mamluks were Georgians because because the Mamluks were quite diverse. There were some differences, but you kind of get the idea. So but the Georgians, the Georgian Mamluks were called Gurjis. And these are the costumes of the Mamluks. So the Gurjis wore yellow belts. Well, these are the copies. These are not the original costumes, obviously, but they were used in different plays and cinemas, and then restored, and then became the museum exhibits. That's basically how it works. And some of the most famous of the Georgian Mamluks was Al-Malik al-Ashraf Qaid Bey, and that's interesting. It didn't really occur to me that was exactly this Sultan Qaid Bey who had the big citadel built in Alexandria, and that citadel is still there. It's a major tourist site as far as I understand, but I haven't been to Alexandria. That's just a photo from Wikipedia. And also, I had no idea that on the Temple Mount, it was exactly this Sultan who had a fountain built and named after him. And speaking of which, next weekend, and the schedule is also on my website and on the chat. Next weekend, I will be taking you on a tour of the Temple Mount, but this time it's going to be the tour of the Muslim heritage site on the Temple Mount and its environs. An amazing architecture, and we'll be talking about the Mamluk architecture. We'll be talking about what the Mamluks brought to the Middle East and how they changed the face of Jerusalem as well, and the Temple Mount for sure. And starting from next week. So, by the way, this fountain is standing next to the madrasa, which is a Muslim religious school, Al Shafia. Well, again, the amazing example of Mamluk architecture. So we'll be talking about that. And from that tour, that tour kind of will mark the start of the short series of walks in the Muslim quarter of Jerusalem. Yeah, and then also Armenian. And then we'll be walking along the Damascus Road with lots of Christian sites of the 19th century. Well, second half of the 19th century. Yeah. So well, and that's the fountain photo taken like in 1920s, if I'm not mistaken. So I will be talking more about this fountain. So I, all of the moment I looked up that it was, well, okay, that I had no idea that Qaid Bey was actually Georgian Mamluk. And then I kind of did more reading, and this is when kind of that Qaid Bey. And well, yeah, I kind of finally connected the dots. Okay, so you see, there are so many different connections you can make, and well, I just had to share it with you. Absolutely. Okay, so this is it. Oh, amazing. I'm not even overrunning. I think this is it for now. So let's have the Q&A. Let me know if you have any questions. And for those who joined us a little after we started, I'm not sure whether you have access to the previous messages, so I'll just copy and paste it all again. I'm gonna really spam heavily this time because I'm sharing the schedule for the 2 weeks, not just 1 week. Again, there are some changes, but not really drastic ones. And also, if I travel, so unpredictable because I'm going to Israel next week. But it's so unpredictable. I don't know. But if I travel, I will also be scheduling some live blogs unless something else begins. You never know, right, Dorothy? You never know. So here are the links to the tours. So there will be live tours as well, as I said. Oh, for some reason it's one and the same, right? Okay, let me try again. Yeah, that's better. Sorry, I just again doubled the same links again. Hi Robin, hi Satyam. So I think I didn't see when you joined. So hi. Let me know if you have any questions. So I think we have a couple more episodes of the palace. Did I say that there is a secret room in the attic, and there were a lot of legends around that room, well, claiming that as if that was actually the room where the Oldenburgs had this passionate night of love for which the entire palace, well, allegedly had been built, which is not the case. But well, there actually, yeah, there was found a secret room. That's true, and it was sealed. Well, we'll be talking about that as well. And there are a couple more beautiful rooms to explore, with beautiful decorations, interesting design, and well, there are one, two, three, four more palaces to talk about in Tbilisi, and some really beautiful apartments as well that I filmed, which are not possible to go for a live tour, but pre-recorded tour. I think it works perfect because, again, now I have the opportunity to share all these stories with you and spread the word about amazing Georgian culture and history, which is, well, um, is not really known and it's not really known to, I would say, wide audience. You mentioned somewhere too difficult to get to see. Where was that? Uh, I don't know. Sorry, Robert. When did I say that? I said so many things. Mosque, the church, the mosque, the church. Well, I said that fountain, named after Kite Bay, is standing next to a madrasa. Madrasa is a it's a religious school, a Muslim religious school, and it's all located on the Temple Mount, basically next to the Dome of the Rock. And well, I wasn't going into details about that, so maybe that's what I meant. So I wasn't going into details, but I will be talking more about the architecture, the Mamluk period, Mamluk legacy, and what you can still find in the Muslim quarter from the Mamluk times. Because Mamluk architecture and Mamluk, well, there is a lot to talk about. They indeed changed the way Middle East looked, the way North Africa looked, and again, the story is absolutely remarkable. So they were basically slaves, but they became the masters. It, it's not like I sympathize or anything, but I think this is just an incredible history here that we also, I think, tend to underestimate in a way. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for joining me. Thank you so much, Cindy. I hope I answered the question, Robert, but I don't remember what I said. I said so many things. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for your support. This tour has been recorded, and I will be sharing the recording on my website, not on my YouTube. Well, because of these, copyright things. Um, Thank you, Anne, for the coffee. As you know, PayPal donation or buy me a coffee, either way, works for me. So thank you so much if you wish to support me. And I will see you in 30 minutes from now for the last tour of tonight. That is the Yelagin Romanov Palace in St. Petersburg. No, thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, dear. Robert, my younger son is in the room. He's designing his own. Grisha, can I say that about what you're doing, what you're designing? I need to ask if I can talk about it. No. Okay, he's playing a startup that's going to cost me a couple $100,000. So probably not in the near future, but yeah. So you see, he's aiming high and thinking big. Yeah, and my other boy, um, yeah, he's at a concert. So yes, Grisha. Э, Я думаю, что сейчас, наверное, не стоит. Или хочешь сейчас? Okay, so if you have a minute, I think Grisha you can actually share what on.
He is designing his new his smartphones. Yes, so he is now a smartphone designer, and he has already designed like tons of the smartphones. And I think he want to show you something. You technically you can go. You don't have to be staying for that. And well, you see, it's kind of a big investment project that I don't know. I don't, but he has invested so much time into this. Okay, I need to then. Okay, what is that? So that's the smartphone he has designed with ChatGPT and with Father. They have been to gazillions of gadget stores already in Tbilisi. He knows every detail of every smartphone on the market, so it's kind of a big deal. Grisha Tycoon in the making. Okay, I'm gonna have to explain what a tycoon is. Thank you, Grisha. You want to say bye to everyone?
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye. Thank you for joining. We'll see you soon. Yeah, tycoon in the making. Exactly. I'm kind of, what am I gonna do now? But okay. At least it's keeping him busy and he's not, running around like crazy. Bye bye, everyone. I'll see you soon. Молодец. Класс, Grisha. Super. Tycoon in the making. I like it. Did you show him the jacket? We jacket, Orly. Did you show him the jacket?